The afternoon was wet and gray, the rain drumming a relentless rhythm on the tin roof of Maya's grandmother's old house in the countryside. Maya, a 12-year-old girl who preferred the smell of old paper to the glow of a new gadget, was in the highest part of the house, the dusty, dimly lit attic. This was her favorite hideout. Here, time seemed to stand still, the only sounds being her own breathing and the rain. She was surrounded by boxes of moth-eaten clothes, broken lampshades, and of course, books. Stacks and stacks of books that looked like they had been resting in that corner for decades. While rummaging through a box made of dark, narrow wood, her fingers brushed against something strange, a book bound in thick golden leather, with no title on the cover. It was heavy, feeling as if it had a life of its own. When she opened it, she was greeted by an illustration of a vast ocean with a pirate ship being battered by a monstrous wave. The weird thing was, the wave was moving. It wasn't just a drawing. The water seemed to flow, and she could hear the faint scream of a captain coming from the page. "Help man the cannons." A tiny voice yelled. Maya blinked hard. "I'm just imagining things," she whispered to herself. She placed the book on the floor, open to that chaotic page. Overcome by curiosity, she stepped closer. She stared intently at the page. It felt like it was pulling her in, and in a moment of clumsiness, or perhaps the call of destiny, Maya tripped over an old rug. She lost her balance. Her feet stepped forward to catch herself, but instead of feeling the hard wooden floor, her right foot landed squarely in the middle of the open book. She expected to feel the hardness of paper and floorboards, but she didn't. It felt like stepping into water. The attic floor suddenly vanished. The smell of dust was replaced by the salty tang of sea air. The quiet patter of rain on the roof turned into the roar of thunder and crashing waves. When Maya opened her eyes, she was soaked to the bone. She was standing in the middle of the deck of a ship. The black pearl of her imagination was real right in front of her. Pirates were running around, hauling ropes. "Get out of the way," shouted a man with a scar on his face, dragging a barrel of gunpowder. Maya couldn't believe it. She grabbed the ship's railing. It was hard, wet, and cold. This was real. She was inside the story. But before she could explore, she glanced at her wristwatch. The numbers were spinning rapidly backwards, and a bright red Y was floating in her vision, like a hologram only she could see. She had the time of her life. She helped tie knots in the sails, talked to the captain, and ate hardtack biscuits. But when the timer in her vision reached 1 o'clock, 1 minute left, she felt a strange tug at her navel. It was like a vacuum cleaner trying to suck her back in. As zero approached, the world around her began to blur. The pirates were turning into letters, the sea was becoming ink, and with a whoosh she crashed back onto the attic floor, bone dry, while the book snapped shut on its own in front of her. Maya was gasping for air, but smiling from ear to ear. She had discovered the library of literal leaps. In the days that followed, this became Maya's ritual. Every afternoon she climbed to the attic. She learned the rules. First, the book must be open on the floor. Second, you have to jump in with conviction. And third, and most importantly, 1 hour only. When the time hits 0, you get pulled back. But there was a warning on the back of an old bookmark she found. Do not let the time run out while in danger, for the story will continue, and you will become nothing more than history. She didn't pay much attention to it. She was having too much fun. She went to Wonderland and had a tea party with a Mad Hatter. She went to the jungle of the Jungle Book and swung on vines with monkeys. The attic could become a doorway to thousands of worlds. But overconfidence often leads to disaster. One day she found a book hidden at the very bottom of the trunk. Its title was The Last Hour of Pompeii. Maya knew her history. This was the city swallowed by a volcano, but she thought, it's only an hour. I just want to see the beauty of the city before it explodes. I'll leave immediately. She opened the book to a page where everything was still peaceful, laid it on the floor, and jumped. When she landed, she was in the middle of a bustling market. Pompeii was beautiful. The buildings were made of white marble. The people wore elegant togas, and the smell of fresh bread and grapes hung in the air. Maya was amazed. She walked around looking at statues and playing with Roman children. The timer in her vision started at Y. She felt confident, but she didn't notice that time inside the story doesn't always match the pace of events. In this book, events moved fast. The timer was only at 30 minutes and 0 seconds when she felt the first tremor. The ground shook violently. Stalls toppled over. People began to scream. Maya looked at the mountain in the distance, Mount Vesuvius. A plume of black smoke was billowing from it like a giant monster. I need to leave, she told herself. She was about to concentrate to let the time pull her out. But she remembered, she couldn't just leave freely unless the timer hit 0, or she returned to the entrance point, the page where she entered. But where was that? She had walked too far. The second rule she hadn't paid much attention to. When you are inside, you are subject to the physical laws of the story, meaning, if you get buried you can't move. Suddenly the volcano erupted. The sky turned black with ash. It rained small, burning stones. People ran in panic. Maya was terrified. She moved with the flow of the crowd to find a safe spot. The timer was at 15 o'clock. I can make it. I can make it, she whispered while dodging falling debris. But as luck would have it, a large chunk of stone from a crumbling temple fell right in front of her, and the rubble pinned her leg to the ground. Ouch! Maya screamed. She fell to her knees. It hurt so much. She tried to pull her foot out, but it was wedged under the heavy stone. The ash was getting thicker. She could barely breathe. The people around her were in chaos, and no one noticed her. She looked at the timer. 5 o'clock. 5 minutes. Help! Somebody help me! She shouted, but her voice was drowned out by the roar of the volcano. This was where the fear set in. If she ran out of time while stuck, what would happen? The warning said, you will become part of history. That meant she would become one of the ash statues of Pompeii forever. She would never return to the attic. She would never see Grandma again. She would die inside a book, Maya cried, her tears mixing with the ash on her face. 3 o'clock. She pushed against the rock with all her might. Heavy. Too heavy. No, my story doesn't end here, she said decisively. She looked around. She saw an iron crowbar dropped by a blacksmith who was fleeing. Wait, she yelled, but he was gone. The crowbar lay on the ground, just a few feet away. She strained to reach it. Every movement sent a jolt of pain through her leg. 1:30 the heat was unbearable. It felt like she was being cooked alive. She stretched her hand out. The tip of her finger brushed the cold iron just a little more. 0:45. She got it. She grabbed the bar and jammed it under the stone. She used every ounce of strength left in her small body. 1, 2, 3. The stone moved just an inch. Enough for her to yank her leg out, scraping the skin deep. 0:15. She stood up, limping heavily. The air was almost gone, just ash and sulfur. She didn't know where she had entered, but it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that her body was free. When the time hit 0, it would pull her back as long as nothing was pinning her down. Maya closed her eyes and prayed. The heat of the pyroclastic flow was racing toward her, a wall of fire and ash. 0:03. She could feel the heat on her back. 0:02. The screams of the people faded. 0:01. The fire was upon her. Whoosh! A deep gasp of air. The smell of sulfur was instantly replaced by the scent of stale, dusty air. The hard stone street became a soft rug. Maya crashed onto the attic floor, rolling over, clutching her leg. She was alive. She was back. She looked at the Pompeii book. It was smoking slightly before it snapped shut. The cover was still warm to the touch. Maya lay there, staring at the attic ceiling where a spider was spinning a web. Tears streamed down her face from the pain in her leg and the overwhelming relief. She looked at the wound on her leg, bruised and scraped, but treatable, a permanent reminder of her adventure. From then on, Maya's respect for the Library of Leaps changed. It wasn't just a playground. These were living worlds, with danger and their own laws. She still read, and sometimes she still jumped into pages. But now, she was much more careful. She only chose stories she knew were safe picnics in the secret garden or flying in Aladdin, and always keeping an eye on the time. Because she learned that in every story, whether you are the hero or just a visitor, time waits for no one. Every second counts, whether inside a book or in real life. And that was the greatest lesson she took from the pages she leaped into.